Very interesting weekend it's been, and we are right back on the air just like that on a Monday morning, welcoming you to Breakfast Central. Bet you had a great time with the crew on Breakfast Extra over the weekend, but guess what? The trio are indeed back to make sure that you have the latest stories, get the latest details, and as you can see, we're looking bright, beautiful, but of course, deep within us, we know that we're in for a longer ride because a lot is indeed happening. I'm Joe Hansen, by the way. Good morning.
And I'm Ben Gabero. A lot is happening. You guys look bright and beautiful, by the way. You don't look like what you're going through with the country, the economy, and many, many, many things that are happening in Indonesia. Like my friends, my Rasta friends in Niger State, we say.
In Indonesia.
In Indonesia.
What are the kind of many things that are happening would you like to share with the audience?
Okay, are you ready to go to Babylon or Zion? Either Babylon or Zion. I'll give you the GPS code.
I'm a no fear no. Push from a place from a buana. I'm a no fear no policeman brutality man. I'm a come from Babylon as the city and place to be in one.
You're a woman of many
what's inside that coffee?
It's about time to check. Welcome to Breakfast Central. It's Wake Up Conversations. It was a long weekend, well rested. So many things happened, and yes, we're here to pick up from where we left off on Friday. So you're in for a treat on Breakfast Central, as always.
All right, and I am Audi, welcoming you. And thanking you for starting your week with us. We hope that we be able to have some pleasant stories to bring your way, because it just unfortunately feels like every other time we have to look at the news, it's not the most pleasant stories. But our responsibility here is to bring you factual information, bring you thorough analysis with our guests who will be joining us, and also giving you the opportunity to share your thoughts on any of the stories when we open our phone lines during the newspaper review. When you were introducing or when you were opening, you said the trio, we need to look for like a fun name to call ourselves, like a fun name, maybe like the Terminator. You know, really had Charlie's Angels.
Yeah, Avengers.
It's just that because I'm the only female here, it's not the Olive's Angels.
That's giving sisterhood. What would be Charlie's Angels for us? Sisterhood now.
Possibly not like that.
Yeah, we are brother Joyce.
Okay, so what kind of name? Avengers?
Just give an example.
It's an example, no.
I think I have the right one. The Avengers.
No.
I like
maybe we should ask our audience to give us a fun name. What do you call this trio? You know, what would be a fun name to give us that we can introduce ourselves? And it would be like our little secret, something we used to bond with you every morning when we're in discussing wake-up conversations.
That's right. So tweet us. I think they should tweet us. Let's know.
What's the name of those three guys in the Bible? Shadrach and Abednego.
That's how we know who that is in the Bible. I'm not a man, so I cannot be a Abednego. Okay. Away from all the laughing, let's start to talk the wake-up conversations with something that's really serious. Inmates in Jos prison have shared what they allege to be the deplorable state of welfare amongst the inmates. There was a clip that went viral of what was purported to be a meal, a video I could not watch. I do not know if you have the video, but if we do, I must warn, viewer discretion is advised, because what you see will make you want to throw up in your mouth. But this is what the inmates in Jos prison were served, and unfortunately this has sparked reactions and outrage across social media, because people are asking at the end of the day, is the punishment for their crime the meal, or is it actually the sentence that they have to face behind bars? This will not be the first time that we're hearing stories about inmates, and unfortunately how they're poorly catered to. Just last year, March 2024, there was a protest by inmates in Plateau State. Okay, all right, this is the video here. Let's take a look at the video. This is what human beings in the prison, in Nigeria's prison service, are feeding on. Even though they've come out to deny it, they've come out to say that the prison system, they've come out to say that it's a lie. But if you go back to March 2024, the prisoners, the inmates at the Jos Correctional Center protested plans by the authorities of the facility to reduce the consumption of rice from 4 times a week to 2 times a week. So this is not the first time that we're here. Please, can we even take out that clip? Thank you. Let's come back. Thank you. Prison inmates in Jos had protested sometime last year. So again, beyond Jos, what this shares is a broader problem. The press release is by the Nigeria Correctional Service, and they said that attention has been drawn to a recent publication alleging that inmates in custodial centers are being fed poorly. They're saying that for the avoidance of doubts, the publication is a recycled one which is pushed forward to create ruckus where none exists, while responding to the same allegation on TVC News on First September 2024, they highlighted that the service operates under strict guidelines as provided by the Nigerian Correctional Service Act 2019. So basically, they're saying that in response to current economic realities and rising inflation, the federal government of Nigeria has recently approved an increase in the daily feeding allowance for inmates in custodial centers from the previous rate of 1,125 naira per day per inmate. And this adjustment is aimed at ensuring that inmates receive adequate and nutritious meals in line with acceptable welfare standards before this inflation. Please, how much of a decent meal can 1,125 naira afford?
If it's increased, then I need to understand that sentence.
No, from even at previous rates, even at the previous rate.
So what's the current rate?
I couldn't see the current rate.
I mean, why would you put the
let's even
previous
go with
rate
the
and then you
previous
don't
rate.
add the
Okay, let's do
1,125 naira, even pre-inflation.
Rice, yesterday, I mean, I like the fact that these things are happening when you are in a circle of things that are equally happening to back up facts. Yesterday at an event, the security guards were talking, and I was at the car park, and one of them said, to eat now is a problem. And the other one said, how much? You just came back, because it's a shift. He has to go, you don't have to come back. And he said, how much did you spend? He said, 1,000 naira. He said, 1,000 naira for what? He said he was just able to buy rice, 700 naira, beans, 300 naira, that's all.
No meat.
And the guy said, no meat. He said, you don't know everything that happen. And then he asked, the rice plenty. I'm just saying what, and I was listening. Yes. I was eavesdropping, I was looking at them. And he said, no, say just small, tiny 2 spoons, that spoon. Say, but make it just whole belly.
So this is the reality of everyday Nigerians. Then talk more of image. I know we cannot deny the fact that there is poor welfare system in our correctional facilities. I think the worst thing that can happen to you is to end up in a correctional facility in Nigeria. I know of someone who has now made it his duty to rehabilitate, to actually work on these correctional centers. Why? Because he unfortunately had to be there for a while, and he complained about the deplorable state of Nigerian correctional facilities, from the way that they sleep, the way that they feed, that they will lump a huge number of people, so you barely have where to comfortably lay your head at night. And then the feeding, beyond whether or not this is just, we have a problem with welfare in our correctional
and that
facilities.
statement is not the best way. And we see a time, if it's JAM, it's either JAM or somebody else, any government agency that is called out to the public, their first action is to deny without showing concrete evidence or providing evidence that says otherwise. You'd expect a video, or you expect an invitation to men of the press.
Yes, so come and do your work.
Let's see you feeding these prisoners. Let's have empirical evidence of what is really going on with the feeding. And also, according to the FIJ, the investigative journalist, FIJ, Nigeria, they said, as for the food, the budget for food and catering inmates in 2025 is 38 billion, 30 million, 8,800.
Can you beat that?
So where's the money going?
38 billion.
Which represents a 13 billion increase from the previous year.
But let's be honest, I can guarantee you that if we carry out an investigative journalism right now and say, okay, let's go on, let's carry an investigation, you'll find out that a lot of the prisoners, the inmates, would cry to you and say they're not having anything better. I think this calls for the Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Ojo, to actually come out and speak clearly on this. Because how would somebody
and
eat?
The worst part,
I mean, there's some that we've seen in the past. Remember the watery beans, and so please take note.
Majority, we're not the criminal justice system. Also, majority of these inmates are awaiting trial inmates.
Exactly,
they shouldn't even be there in the first place. Like Inibe has said the last time he was here, that the Nigerian police is the #1 factor for putting people in prisons where they shouldn't be in prisons.
There are so
many cases that of people that shouldn't be there, but because for one reason or the other, Nigerian police not doing its proper duty, they end up behind.
Let's not even go too far. I'm glad you mentioned Inibehe, because when we're talking about this, my mind went back to Quadri Alabi and his experience whilst in prison, talking about how they were using this young man to pack feces. So the quality of life, again, what is the quality? Are we able to guarantee
what is corruption about it?
Exactly. So I think we now need to revisit the concept of what our prison systems are.
No,
It's supposed to be called the correctional facility. What are they correcting? Are they not creating a system that hardens people more? There are people who would argue that when people go to the prison system, they come out even more hardened because they've been made to face a tough, rough, and ridiculously difficult life associated with gang members. Do we really operate a correctional facility as the term
implies? It's just semantics. They changed the name from prisons to
correctional service, and yet nothing is
happening.
Correctional about
when they were prisons. It's really a sad reality. Let's hope the Interior Minister, like Joe said, does something about this as soon as possible.
Hopefully. I think he needs to probe that. But let's move on to another story this time. At first, it was a case of nursing students singing "Na Your Mama Be This."
We may get another one. And your mama be this.
Yeah, and then trying as much as possible to refrain from associating with the First Lady of Nigeria. Well, just this past weekend, Rivers State decided to, do something quite different. The women who were invited for an event decided to walk out to the First Lady of Nigeria in this purported amateur video that you can see. They said it was an empowerment program in the EUI Center in Port Harcourt. But the moment other women, including, they said, a lady from Akwa Ibom, started to address the people, they got angry, and the women who have formed the conglomerates decided to stage a walkout and say enough is enough. And what were they chanting? They said, "Release Fubara, free Fubara," and then they left. In other words, not making the First Lady feel welcomed once more. But let's take a look at the video, and you get to listen to what they say.
Why are you outside? Why are you outside? We are outside because we were deceived yesterday. They told us that the amiable governor of Rivers State, Sasinalaya Fubara, wife is hosting the women, the EUI Event Center, only for us to come here and see one contact panel human being who I don't know. A wife to address us. What right do they have to address us? They don't have any right. We want to see. Either this or this, but she cannot address me. That is why we left.
So controversy upon controversy. You saw that video. The women said no, they're not interested. They were expecting that the
the
River State governor,
yes,
because he's the River State, he's elected.
We only have a sole administrator in River State,
exactly.
And then there's a River State governor.
Yes, the River State governor's wife was expected to be at the event and so on, and then
all the First Lady of Nigeria.
Yeah, and all they saw was different, setting and plan, and they said no, they're not having this. They're not going to have it. And it begs a question that why must we try to do things different?
I mean, the women too. I mean, you saw Renewed Hope Initiative at the back of your T-shirt. You should know what that means. You're wearing a T-shirt with the First Lady's image.
It wasn't actually,
until you got there that you knew that.
It wasn't actually the First Lady. So I think the person we were working out on was the sole administrator's wife, Teresa Ibas, who hosted them. And they're asking, in what capacity is Teresa Ibas hosting us? You are not our governor. That's what this woman was saying here. Like either this or this. Exactly. They're complaining about your husband. They're saying it's either Senator Remi Tinubu or the wife of Simfubara. So why are you hosting us? In what capacity? You are a sole administrator's wife. Who put you in charge? So at the end of the day, again, we have rejected Ibas's wife, and they're asking in what capacity, what is she doing in River State? Why is she hosting the women of River State? And I think that it's important that government officials are sensitive.
And they also read the room, yes.
Exactly. Read the room, be empathetic, apply EQ to certain things. She really had no business hosting the women of River State, especially seeing that her husband's position has been largely debated. Her husband's position as sole administrator is under strict criticism.
But please, let me see well. In what capacity was she hosting?
That's the question.
In what capacity?
We like titles. Wife of sole administrator
Nigeria,
capacity.
Hey, she's
I'll just
the
give you the
wife
capacity.
of the sole administrator who is put there as an intermediate, response to the crisis that ought to have been, in quotes, were set to happen in Rivers State. So it's like bringing somebody to, to just be a stopgap to manage a company for just 2 months, and then the wife comes and starts talking to
Your
everybody.
husband's position is not even constitutional. They've said the constitution doesn't give the
Sole administrator.
the president the powers to suspend the governor in that situation. So it's quite unfortunate.
I hope that this again.
And I'm sure she would have learned some lessons for this. She won't
Well,
try this.
But Wike has apologized. The FCT minister has come out to apologize. He
In
said he
what
apologizes to the First Lady for the walkout of
Who is the First
the
Lady
women.
in this case? Like, is he-
I mean, he apologizes
Because
to the President Tinubu's wife. There it is. He said Wike condemns sponsored. He calls it a sponsored walkout on First Lady. Says it's disturbing and embarrassing. He has condemned yesterday's walkout, which happened 2 days ago, Senator Remi Tinubu, by a group of women loyal to the suspended governor of Rivers State, Simnalayi Fubara, describing it as an embarrassment to the people of Rivers State. He went ahead to apologize to the First Lady, the President, and also not forgetting he talked a lot. He said some women, led by some sacked local government vice chairman, had staged a walkout during the Renewed Hope Initiative Empowerment Program organized by the Office of the First Lady of Nigeria, held at the EUI Event Center in GRA, Port Harcourt. And he said it is enough to be visiting people to plead for peace. Those who genuinely want peace work and act for it. So in other words, the reality is the First Lady Nigeria was to put that event together. But of course, I think they were not impressed that they also had, someone from the other side to address them as well.
So back to the situation as an MC. I know that when the First Lady, because I recently was at an event where the First Lady was meant to be there, but she wasn't there. So you introduced her as the First Lady of the Republic of Nigeria, represented by the Minister of Women Affairs. So in this case, it was the First Lady of Nigeria, represented by the wife of the sole administrator, which again was unimportant because back to the issue of the sole administrator, Rivers people haven't fully embraced the concept of the sole administrator. Maybe it would have been better for her to send somebody else, another minister, somebody else, not that woman. Because her husband was a position that the Rivers people haven't really accepted. The position is criticized largely. But he's apologizing to her, basically saying, if you insult someone who comes in the name of the First Lady, then they insult the First Lady. But then again, I want to remind us of the power of women's voices. Women have been making strong political statements from as far back as 1929 when the About Women's Riot happened, and that women realized their ability to strong statements pass across, create political tornadoes if they must or if they will. I hope that we see the strength of women, and that women see they have strength in numbers too, and that they wield it in the right way and not use it, not allow politicians to wield it in their own favor.
Okay, now going to our final wake-up conversation story for today. Former Vice President Alhaji Atiku Abubakar has urged youth to demand, is urging youth to demand electoral reforms. If you recall, since the last general elections in Nigeria, INEC has not, the proposed electoral reforms have not been implemented. There's hardly any discussions about electoral reforms and lessons from the off-cycle elections and also the last general elections. What we're seeing in the politics is a lot of cross-carpeting and also talks about 2027, but no one is discussing how the electoral umpire, that's INEC, would improve its services so they can restore trust and credibility to the system that some have described as bureaucracy, because these days it's the judiciary judiciary and the Supreme Court that is giving a certificate of return. You contest elections, the lawyers go to court, there's a tribunal, and then it's not at the ballot. But let's listen to what Alhaji Atiku Abubakar had to say.
We really have a long way to go. There are challenges, but you must dedicate yourselves to confronting those challenges. If you don't dedicate yourself to confronting those challenges, you have no future. When we witnessed an improvement in our electoral process during Buhari's time, and he knew that if he signed that amendment, it could affect his re-election, he decided not to sign. He left it until he secured his second term before signing the amendment. Now we have a similar situation. There are amendments in the pipeline, but I don't see this president signing those amendments in the Assembly, because one to explore
all over Nigeria, people who are fired offenses. Till today, we're still on their tip.
Said, I like the fact that Atiku has been referred to, that Alhaji Atiku Abubakar has been referred to as one who continues to try, perennial. They've called him a perennial loser. They've also called him a different name like a serial contestant, you know, and so on. But whatever he's saying is exactly in line with what every other Nigerian who really thinks deeply about democracy has said, because we've seen the stories, we've spoken to them here on the program. They said, listen, since 2023, we are nearing another election cycle. It's about time that we may have learned from what happened in 2023 and ensure that we take reforms in clear position so that it does not repeat itself.
Yeah,
and I
but
think
like you
that's
said,
just
and I absolutely agree with him that I don't think the incumbent president is going to sign those reforms because they will affect him. And sometimes politicians lack a system where they loopholes or systems.
It's not sometimes. A lot of the times, politicians will love
to manipulate.
Exactly, they can manipulate this in their favor. And what he's asking for should not be rocket science. These are things that will help ensure that if we digitize our electoral system, we ensure that we have electronic counting. Everything is done by the minute. You can see the board. That will help clarity. But I don't think that we're ready for that kind of clarity with our elections in Nigeria. We hope that in the near future we can be ready for Nigerians deserve and they can feel fair. Meta threatens to shut down in Nigeria over $290 million fines. Set up NGE 6 reform of Cybercrime Act against journalists. And away from that, Kano residents divided over arrival of new Galadima. We did see the conflict of in Kano State. PCNGI NURTW comments 40% price reduction scheme for residents, and the newspaper front pages will be reviewed this morning, and then we'll open the phone lines. Join us for all these and more.
Thanks for staying with us here on Breakfast Central. Let's start off with a very interesting conversation. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, is threatening to pull the plug on Facebook and Instagram access in Nigeria. So if you're a content creator, or better still, you get your information from these platforms, you might want to be careful. Well, that's because the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, FCCPC, seem to see this as a tantrum to dodge hefty privacy violation fines. But here's what we know, and here's what's been brewing between Meta and Nigeria's regulatory agency. Now, back in July 2024, the FCCPC slammed Meta with a 220 million naira fine for multiple data privacy violations. The decision came after an investigation into Meta and WhatsApp, collectively referred to as the Meta parties, for breaching Nigeria's consumer protection and also data protection laws.
The FCCPC found that Meta denied Nigerian users meaningful control over their data, shared personal information without consent, treated Nigerian users unfairly compared to users in other countries, and abused its dominant market position through exploitative privacy policies. But Meta told the BBC that Nigerians might lose access to Facebook and Instagram altogether, citing unrealistic regulatory demands and growing pressure from Nigerian authorities. Joining us to unpack these issues are fintech expert and founder of Ancestors Advisory, Fishayo Durojaye, and we also have Adeboye Adegoke, Senior Manager for Grants and Strategy at the Digital Rights Advocacy Group Paradigm Initiative. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
All right, let's begin in the studio first before we come to you virtually. I think to start here in the studio to ask, like Nigerian parlance, is this initial gra-gra? Are they just bluffing? Do you think they would actually up and leave?
Well, okay, so like I said before, right, this is not the first time Meta has threatened to leave any country. They threatened to leave Australia because of similar data privacy issues. They threatened to leave the Eurozone entirely, or Europe, right, because of, again, GDPR type regulation. So it's not the first time. And of course, is it legally possible? Yes, it is legally possible. But I don't think that it is economically unlikely. So again, I'll explain what I mean. It means that legally they can say, well, we're not, operating in Nigeria again. But it means that for that to happen economically, it means that, again, Nigerian government needs to maybe block essentially access to Facebook or Instagram for Nigerians specifically, right? So that is how they can economically live. But again, that is actually very unlikely. So again, we'll see where this goes. But like I said, this is not the first time they've threatened any country, but eventually they always found a middle ground between the regulators and of course the companies. So eventually they never really left.
Now let me bring in Adeboye, who's joining us virtually. What exactly are the violations that led to this $220 million fine against Meta? And Meta has also claimed that regulatory demands are unrealistic. Do you think that's a fair assessment, or it's a deflection from compliance?
All right, thank you. About what led us here. I remember we had this conversation about 9 months ago when the fine was first issued. And this is an outcome of an investigation conducted by FCCPC and in collaboration with NIDA at the time. Now the NDPC, and the allegations against Meta is that they are engaging in unfair practices, abusing their market dominance or privilege in terms of some of the updates they did on WhatsApp specifically. So in 2021, just to take us back, WhatsApp has requested for its users in Nigeria to accept a new update. And they gave subscribers just a month to accept that update, in which case, if you don't accept the update, you will not have access to WhatsApp anymore. So the FCCPC in the investigation ruled that such, giving its users such options was unfair, especially compared to what obtains in other parts of the world. So the idea was that given the market dominance of Meta as owners of, WhatsApp, Facebook and Instagram, it was asking its users to either accept or lose access to the platform in a situation, in a context whereby you know for a fact that most of these users have no other option than to accept. So it's almost like you just put them in a situation whereby they can't say no. So that's one issue. Another issue is around data protection, whereby the FCCPC argue that the privacy notice that was given to users in Nigeria is unfair if you compare it to what obtains in other places. And one of the requests that was also made of Meta was that that's by the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation, is that Meta must give users the ability to either give or deny, consent to their data being shared by Meta with other with its other subsidiaries and outside of the country. So this is what led us to this place.
All right. I mean, that's a whole lot, breaking it down and looking at what the possibilities are. But do you think it's actually fair on the part of Nigerians and most importantly the FCCPC? Because if we take a look at it, these fines in other countries have also been slammed on Meta, and at the end of the day, they've negotiated, they've also come to an agreement, and they've complied. So, do we see them complying, if at all? I'm going to go back to you virtually before we do come back to the studio.
They paid in France and South Korea.
Yeah, I mean, and all that. Do you think they will comply?
Well, I believe they will comply, but of course not without a fight. I mean, they are a business concern, and you wouldn't expect that they should just pay any fine that has been imposed on them. What any reasonable business entity would do in situations like this is to fight until they can negotiate, if possible, to zero fine, to a slap in the wrist, and hopefully, if that cannot be achieved, they would expect that the fine will be significantly reduced. But I believe they will comply, and this is why I say so. If you look at the as you have rightly said yourself, Nigeria is not the first country to have fined Meta or even other entities like this. So I don't think it is strange that they are being fined. Nigeria is only exercising its regulatory responsibility over this actor. But in situations like this, even if you leave the technology ecosystem, if you go to any sector, whether oil and gas, even the tobacco industry, anytime that the authorities fine or exact certain regulatory measures, you would expect the player to fight back, to push back until they can have some leverage. The same thing happened to MTN. If you remember, some years ago, MTN was fined, and they kept fighting it until it got to the highest authority in Nigeria. And there was a negotiation. The fine was significantly reduced, and they eventually agreed to pay what it was reduced to. So I do think that they will comply at some point, but they will fight to finish, even if it means that they should push this onto the highest adjudicatory authority, which I think they should do. If I was advising them, that's exactly what I would advise them to do. But to quickly touch on the headline about Meta threatening to leave Nigeria because of this fine, it's also, for me, it's also part of the negotiation tactics to kind of create that fear, to kind of create, because you know how valuable the platform is to Nigeria. Nigeria use it for businesses, WhatsApp, everything. In fact, when I was contacted to come on this interview, I was just about strategizing a business that I started the conversation on Instagram. Then we came to conclude it on WhatsApp when I saw the call to come here. So it is very it's a strategic company to Nigeria economy as we speak. We cannot deny that. And Meta as a company also understand that leverage and is trying to push as much as possible to kind of force the hand of the regulatory authority to reduce as much as possible, if not even totally cancel the fine. But what I am seeing, just as a projection, is that the fine might be reduced at some point to kind of have some balance in terms of, you don't want to discourage innovation, but at the same time, you want to be assertive in ensuring that you assert your regulatory responsibility over Meta as an actor in the sector.
All right, let's now bring in Fisayo into the conversation. You said that it's a negotiation tactic. The regulatory authorities have called their bluff, and they've said that they can't allow their hands be tied to their back. Let's imagine worst case scenario. Worst case scenario in this instance, meaning that Meta pulls out of Nigeria. What sort of economic implications will this incur, and what sort of short and long-term disruptions are we going to experience?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Again, sorry, just to take back from that, I think that while Meta needs to negotiate, I think it's also important for Meta to understand, for us to understand that if Meta allows the fine to go through, right, it means that there could be, other effects. So it means that Ghana can do the same, any other country can do the same. So again, they're trying to figure out how do I not create, a precedent to say any country can just, fine, at least in Africa. I mean, in Europe, yeah, they probably have done that a couple of times. But in Africa, we've not seen that kind of fine, a lot more, right? So it is just to ensure that, yes, they are protected on either side. And of course, when I say that, how does that affect, people economically? It means that businesses that are being done. So, for instance, there are many people that are content creators today, right, where their business is essentially saying that they're creating content on all these social media apps. And of course, Instagram is one of the biggest, platform for that. There is trade happening, meaning that people that are, selling their goods on Instagram. So it means that you start commission on Instagram with an Instagram DM. It moves from that to a WhatsApp chat, and of course, so again, it is. Nigerian businesses or small businesses, SMEs, are largely dependent on that platform to start conversation around trade or just to build awareness, at all. Across other platforms. So it means that anyone in Nigeria today can start a business, sitting in their home, creating an Instagram account, and then start, their publicity general from there. So it's been very valuable, for Nigerians to use, essentially. So the economic, implication can be very devastating for small business, because if both Instagram and, well, they didn't mention WhatsApp, right? Instagram and Facebook, is taken out, then I'm not sure. Well, maybe other platforms like, say, TikTok, which again has a different use case and stuff, might step in. But I think that to a large extent, small businesses will probably bear the brunt, and of course, nobody wants that eventually.
All right. Now, just following up on what you said, it appears from your analysis, it appears we have more to lose from our end, and that brings me to this question: how enforceable are these fines and sanctions against a company that is as large and globally entrenched like Meta? Since you just said the implication. Even companies running businesses, so many people use platforms like WhatsApp. They have WhatsApp groups. They use it for in-house communications and all of that. So I think Meta understands that, look, you guys will have more to lose. So they're playing hardball. Yeah. So if we call their bluff and say, okay, go ahead and do your worst, how do we now enforce this ban?
First is that I think it was Meta that threatened to leave, right? The regulators are not threatening them to leave. They say, well, you have to comply with us, right? So how enforceable is that? Because it's a global company, you can do as much. At some point, if, to enforce the ban, it means that they have to ensure that they have, enforce their own leverage, meaning that do I have to then restrict, WhatsApp access? And of course, how do I do that? Speak to, internet service providers in Nigeria. And similar to the way, Twitter or X, back in the days was banned in Nigeria, where people then have to figure out a way to continue to access it on their own. So they can leverage, control around internet service providers here in Nigeria to ensure that, yes, they don't, load the pages of Meta, so either Instagram, Facebook, or potentially even WhatsApp, right? So that's a way for them to essentially, force the hand, of Meta. So again, I have to ask, how strategically important is Nigeria, particularly to Meta, right, from an advertising revenue type perspective? Because again, how they make money, from the platform. I would, again, from the last data I see, I think that, from Nigeria, I think they made less than $50 million, if I remember correctly, right? Again, I have to check and confirm that. But in the grand scheme of things, where a company that makes billions and billions of dollars in revenue from advertising, which is their primary business, right? I would think that it's a very negligible revenue stream for them.
All right, I want to now go back to Adegoke. If again, still looking at worst case scenario, if Meta pulls out, do you think that our local tech, the tech within Nigeria, can fill in the vacuum that will be left behind?
Thank you for that very brilliant question. And, it's very important for us to understand how we got here in the first place. And if you look at how we have been having this conversation, the context setting around this conversation, it exactly explains why it was important for those regulatory action to be taken. We are dealing in a situation whereby Meta has become so powerful to the extent that asking them to obey or comply with our laws has led us to conversation around, oh, if they go, what will it do to our economy, etc. And that's because we didn't, not just Nigeria, globally, tech regulation wasn't a conversation that was started early enough. So before regulation conversation started, some of these companies like Meta have acquired so much, relevance, they have acquired so much resources, they have acquired all their potential competition. Remember, Instagram, WhatsApp were independent, companies that were acquired by Facebook. So what has happened is that this company has become so big and has dominated the market to the point that you can hardly hold them accountable for anything without threatening you. Now, to come to your question about whether local tech can fill in the gap, I don't see that happening. I don't think the local tech ecosystem has been developed to the point whereby it can fill such gap. But what I also know is that it's a global economy, right? We live in a global village. So if I'm thinking in terms of, let's even say Meta pulls out and we don't have Facebook without Instagram, trust me, some alternative already exist that are not popular, that are not as powerful, and that will not be as effective immediately if they have to step in, and fill that gap. They already exist, and they are not necessarily local alternative, but they are also, they also provide similar services like short messaging services, social media platform. And I'm not even talking about the popular ones like TikTok. I'm talking about smaller other platforms that some people are already using, but that are not as popular. I don't have a lot of people on them. So they cannot immediately fill that type of gap if Meta should step out now. But I want us to pay attention to the important lesson in this conversation, which is the fact that you should never allow an entity to have so much market dominance to the point that you are literally scared that if this entity should pull out, our economy is going to crash, it's going to affect small businesses and all that, which is what exactly the FCCPC is trying to address, to say that the outsized and market dominance of Meta has to be checked. Meta continues to, abuse that dominance that he has in them. And this is not a Nigerian conversation. It is exactly what is happening in the EU as well. EU is trying to achieve the same thing, to say that, you cannot continue to abuse your dominance, your market dominance, to the point that, number one, you are not allowing innovation. Because one of the things that happens when an actor becomes so big within a sector is that they destroy every potential competition. So every new innovation that can potentially offer the kind of services that they offer now, they either go in and buy them or employ other tactics to make sure that they don't become as big as they are. So
we can say that
these are the issues.
It's a monopoly of some sorts, right? But the question now is, like you say, no entity should be allowed to be that big. Is this not a conversation that we're having a little too late? And do you think that this lesson that you're saying our government that we should have learned, do you think that we are actually going to learn this lesson? I'm assuming that what you would infer is that it should be a wake-up call for Nigeria to invest in, local tech, indigenous tech, regional and continental tech alliances to ensure that we don't have a repeat of situations like this. But do you think that we're learning this lesson at all from here?
I honestly hope we are, but it's also a very complicated conversation because previously, I'm speaking to you this way today. If you brought me to your channel maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago to come and talk about this issue that government is threatening or has fined a company like Meta, I will come here to tell you that, they want to restrict people's right to use platform for expression and all of that, because there is also issue around trust. We don't trust government to the level whereby platforms that have given us an opportunity to express ourselves, that when government come on them like this, we don't trust the intention. So there is a trust deficit that happens that slows down even government ability to introduce regulation. But there is also what we also must acknowledge is also that there is also the knowledge gap. The problem is not a Nigeria problem. Even in the EU, they were late to the party in terms of regulation. So a country like Nigeria was only able to try to take measures after we have the EU show some leadership in terms of how do you regulate big tech, how do you put data protection laws in place, etc. But the important lesson that we have to take is that we are late, as you rightly said, but if we are late, then the right thing to do is, if the best time to do this was yesterday, then the next best time is today. It is not for us to now continue to drag this and all of that. We must be willing to learn by experience. I mean, for the regulators, this is also like gambling, because you don't really know how this will pan out, whether this will significantly impact the economy negatively. But I believe that there is a lot of, options that are available. And that's why I said that I don't think Meta will pull out, because at some point, this does not stop at the table of the FCCPC. At some point, I imagine that higher authority may come in. You might have the Ministry of Communication also coming in, Ministry of Trade coming in, even if it has to get to the level of the presidency to kind of protect the digital economy, to kind of protect the small businesses that rely on WhatsApp, on Facebook, etc., to do their businesses. I think we can manage the situation. That's the point I'm saying, while we learn from the experience and also position ourselves to better engage. And you mentioned something very critical, which I would like to wrap up on, which is the fact that in terms of looking at this regionally or continentally, I also think that the point that was made around the revenue that maybe Meta gets from Nigeria is significant. It also affects the ability of the regulator to exert its authority. If an EU fine Meta $1 billion, you will not hear Meta saying things like, we are going to leave EU, because EU has the market size, it has the ability, the leverage to kind of rein in Meta to comply to its rules. But individual countries in Africa may not have that type of leverage because of the size of the market. That is why Africa as a continent must negotiate as a unit. So let's not just limit this conversation as Nigeria engaging Meta. Let's see, one of my proposition would be that Africa must come together, band together, and see how do we think of regulating the big tech from a continental perspective, so that you can have better bargaining power and better bargaining arguments.
All right, thank you.
Good point there. Nigeria is taking the battle against big tech on behalf of Africa. Fisayo, the last time Mark Zuckerberg was in Nigeria, was having a great time jogging on Lekki, Ikoyi Bridge, eating suya, So he's a friend of Nigeria. How do you see, I know you don't have a crystal ball in front of you, but how do you see this playing out?
I think that everyone will come to the table. The Minister for Communications, Bosun Tijani, is strong supporter of Nigeria's tech ecosystem. So I don't think he would watch and allow some of these things to escalate to the point where Meta would eventually leave as well. And of course, when it comes to even trade, small businesses, everyone are stakeholders in this in this conversation. So it's not just about FCCPC alone. It's also around the broader economic conversations there. So I mean, like you said, this conversation is going to go from all, they'll exhaust all the appeal legal path possible, and of course come to the table and then have an agreement to say, okay, well, this is how we're going to move forward, to deal with this issue going forward as well. So I guess I would
even those of us on this panel, we use WhatsApp for our editorial meetings. If they take away WhatsApp, we'll be having our meetings in Olive's house and be eating jollof rice every evening.
Isn't it an indictment on Nigeria's tech ecosystem? Don't you think by now, I mean, China, they do have WeChat, they have their own version of the YouTube. They don't depend on the regular one that everyone uses. So, I mean, fintech, everyone is now tilting towards fintech because maybe
all the tech benefits we have.
I mean, you're a tech pro as well, if I put it that way. So why have you not created our very own,
I'm more of a finance bro in tech
okay.
than tech. Yeah. You see, but again, I would say China has about 1 billion people, so they can afford to do that. So which is why, rather than Nigeria working in silos, it can leverage, Africa's over 1 billion people to say, do we create, something ourselves? So China is the only one that seems to be able to, build, directly, because they have the people and the numbers to ensure that that is done. And of course, I don't know if they have the leverage. They have the workforce, they have the leverage, essentially, because they are, I think one of the senators Senator Kennedy in the US says that God created heaven and earth. Every other thing is made in China, right? So again, that they're able to do that because they have that leverage, right? But Nigeria, we have a lot more things to do.
Or we've just not thought about it right in terms of, because I know there are a lot of tech companies and people are joining forces, seeing what they can create. Or is it a case of, is Nigeria made so we don't believe in it? No. I've seen some apps though from very young, tech professionals who come up with apps that have a resemblance with that of WhatsApp. But then again, it seems like Nigerians are not embracing it because.
So I don't think we have a tech problem. I think Nigerians can build this. There's nothing technically difficult for Nigerians to build because we build more complex things before. I guess the bigger problem is to say how do you get the momentum to go? Because again, the more people are on the platform, the more the platform becomes viable. So it's called network effect. So right now, my mom is on Facebook. So if I start, to build a new one, I have to get my mom to get on it so that it will convince me to be on it. Then my friends have to be on it. Then it becomes valuable.
Yeah.
But right now, everyone is already on Instagram. Everyone's already. Why would I,
leave it and follow and call Luku?
So that's where the problem really starts from. So it's not about the technical, ability to build. It's about, how do you create that network effect to ensure that yes, you're able to build that momentum.
I mean, from all that you both have said, I think that the main thing I can take away from this is to hope that everyone comes to the table and we find a resolution. But beyond that, we also need to be more proactive than reactive. We didn't need to wait to get to this level to start thinking. And then we now, like both of you have said, we need to think about working together as opposed to working in silos, and then find a way to find that middle ground between protecting national interests and then ensuring that we're not scaring investors and innovators. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. Thank you for joining us, both of you, to our guests, Fisayo Durojaye and Adeboye Adegoke. Thank you for your time. Now let's share with you what's coming up next on Breakfast Central. Coming up next on Breakfast Central.
Serap NGE seeks end to Cybercrime Act against journalists. We'll take a look at that conversation. Man spends 8 months in prison over alleged phone theft. Can you beat that? Concerned Delta Group kicks against Governor Okowa's defection. We'll take a look into these stories and more after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Our next conversation is one that is, shaking Nigeria's media landscape, and it calls for an immediate removal of the Cybercrime Act by the Nigerian Guild of Editors and SERAP. Now, these organizations argue that despite amendments, the law continues to be weaponized against journalists, activists, and everyday citizens expressing their views. Now, how do we prevent such laws from being used to suppress the media, which is the fourth estate of the realm? Joining us for this discussion is a constitutional lawyer who is here with us once again to take a look at this conversation. And of course, we would expand the conversation to many more. But let's also tell you that Section 24 controversy, that's another thing we'll look at, where critics say this section remains vague and open to abuse, allowing authorities to criminalize online speech, including private conversations, and so much more. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining us as well. It's a broad conversation. We'll take a look at this, and then we'll also like to touch on some other aspects as well of what's been happening, especially here in Nigeria. But I just mentioned the section, and being broad, being opened, the conversations could lead to one being arrested, one being held in court, one being taken for one reason or the other, and so on and so forth. Journalists we've seen, especially in this administration, have been arrested, they've been picked up. There's also the case of Very Dark Man, VDM, of course, who makes a popular name amongst the youths these days. And then you also have the case of activists. We do recall what happened to a very popular, senior colleague of yours as well, who was picked from Lagos and taken to another state. How do we handle this situation now? As a country, what do you think needs to be done quickly, looking at what Serap has said as well?
Well, let's even go to the background. The reason sedition was actually abolished from our laws was because of the fact that it contravenes the Constitution. It contravenes Chapter 4 of the 1999 Constitution that enumerates the fundamental rights of Nigerians. So it was abolished. Then what we had left was defamation, slander, libel, which is civil, okay? So we should have left it at that. But in 2015, we all were already there when the internet and, in fact, today, over 60% of us have moved online. More people are more online than they are offline. Okay, so we have carried all our idiosyncrasies online. What it therefore means that there will be infractions, legal infractions there. So that's what necessitated the Cybercrime Act 2015. Now, Section 24 is so expansive, it's so open to so many interpretations, especially by law enforcement agencies that are not properly groomed in the law and are not believe that anything you say without criticism against anybody in authority is an offense. So calling for the repeal or removal of that law is not the direct answer to the question. Because there are those who are actually online genuinely damaging brands with falsehoods. You understand? There are those assassinating characters online, you know, doing all that. So these are offenses. But what we can do is to educate the public and the law enforcement agency as to what constitutes an offense under the Cybercrime Act. Because we cannot go back to where we're coming from, just take it down, and then we're left with slander and libel, which is civil. Okay, we cannot maintain that, given the dynamic nature of society. Society has grown. I mean, there are a lot of things going on online.
And the laws have to evolve.
Yes, the laws have to evolve, but it should not be left in the hands of illiterate policemen. Those who have agendas, those who, when they are paid, they just go and pick up someone. Okay? Those who do not understand the import of the law. The import of that law is when you say those things and they turn out to be false, that is when you have an infraction. Not when it's a fair comment, not when it's the truth, not when it's actually what is going on. Do you understand? But the bend to it is that before that is ascertained, you have been arrested already. Because you need to go to court to prove that you are not maligning anyone. You are saying the facts, and you have evidence to that effect. But before then, you would have suffered detention, you would have suffered humiliation, they would have picked you on a Friday. So that you don't get out until Monday.
Yeah, just like Williams.
So that's what I'm saying. So in order to guard against that, the law enforcement agencies, they need to be informed that Chapter 4 of the 1999 Constitution is very valid. Okay, and if they're not going to adhere to the provisions of the rights of Nigerians as enshrined in that Chapter 4 of the Constitution, then it will be better to remove this law. If the law enforcement agency will not be schooled in that Chapter 4 of the Constitution that defines human rights, Section 36, 38, 39 of them, you are all in that constitutional safeguards. And those constitutional safeguards are much more important than the Cybercrime Act. The Constitution is supreme, and this provision shall have a binding force on all persons and authority throughout the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Okay? So any other law that is inconsistent with the provision of the Constitution, this Constitution shall prevail, and that other law, to the extent of its inconsistency, shall be void. So if you have some issues in society and the law came as a result of that, just like the Cybercrime Act, and that law, its interpretation is being used against the provision of the Constitution, that law has to go.
So what we're saying in essence, are we saying that this Cybercrime Act, that it's the implementation that is the challenge, or would you say it's flawed from the start?
Yes, it is not flawed from the word. If you look at it, the intention is whoever uses an electronic device, the phone, internet, or whatsoever, okay, to share falsehood, okay, to malign people, to assassinate people's character, to do all sorts, to reduce people's reputation in the eyes of the right-thinking members of society, to do all sort wrong, is an offense, and there are penalties to it. Okay? But what our law enforcement agencies are doing today, they are not asking whether it's false or true.
They pick you up.
They just pick you up. That's what I'm saying. And
so
and it is wrong.
Where is the loophole that allows them to just pick people up?
The loophole there is that whoever uses the internet, the social media, whatever it is, all that.
Which is everybody.
Yes, which is everybody. To say anything against government. Once you say anything against the government, and because the government is also fueling it, they just go and pick you up.
So how do we then find that balance between ensuring that we're protecting freedom of speech in a country that is a democratic country like ours, and ensuring that we do not encourage cybercrime?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We must educate the law enforcement agencies, and our politicians should help us on this. You see, because the politicians have almost destroyed this country. Whatever is left of this country is by grace. They destroyed everything. The politicians are the one orchestrating this arrest here and there. Yes, because first, they don't want to manage the country proper. And then people are forced to talk. And when they talk, you come against them. Nigerians don't talk. Nigerians don't criticize the government as a citizen of the United States will do to the government. Because
very true.
Yes,
refugees.
It's in the amendment.
Comedy.
They would. Yeah, even the average person on the street will tell you the amendment is relying on to say what it's saying. Okay, you know the steps and all that.
That informed of the law. Yeah.
Yes. So we need to be informed of the law. Every Nigerian should study law, whether they are going to practice or not. It just makes society orderly. When you know exactly, when the police knows where his rights starts and end, you know where yours starts and end. Everyone is aware of the law.
Your suggestion, though, looks like a tall order, looking at the reputation of the Nigerian police and how that institution is run, by saying the police should check itself and educate itself on this law so they won't be used arbitrarily when there's also economic sort of benefits to them being used, because they get mobilization by some of those politicians to pick people. So beyond the police self-regulating, is there no way we can go back and amend this law and check it from its source? And also, does the judiciary bear in either reinforcing or challenging the misuse of laws like the Cybercrime Act to suppress dissent?
Yeah. What are you going to amend in that chapter 24? Because if you look at it, it actually states what constitutes an infraction. Yeah, what constitutes an infraction under a civil suit, usually. Slander, libel. They just pulled it out by saying if you use an online platform,
why was it different when it was before it became cyber?
It was different because it's civil. Civil, you sue and ask for compensation. Now, if you slander me or you write anything about me or whatever it is that is untoward, that brings stigma to me, that reduces my reputation in the eyes of the right-thinking members of society, I will sue you as a person. And then I'll go to court to ventilate with evidence and ask for compensation. You know, if I get judgment, you pay. Okay, if you don't pay, you go to prison. Because then an action will be filed against you to come and show cause. If you're not able to do that, an action will be filed to commit you to prison. Okay? But in this case, when you make it criminal, it is now the state prosecuting. So police now will come after you. Okay? So, and when you do that, it has been stated that, you know, the Cybercrime Act have made a provision where individuals now use the state apparatus to pick people up who offend them. And taxpayers' money is being used to, during the case of Dele Farotimi and so it is wrong for you to have such. So they shouldn't just pick people anyhow. They must come within the confines of what truly, because unless you are saying we should go and abrogate Chapter 4 of the 1999 Constitution, and that cannot be done, because if you do that, you have killed humanity. These are inalienable rights that are given to humanity by God. So those rights cannot be taken away. Okay, the right to freedom of expression, the right to state exactly what you feel about a situation. Nobody should be arrested or picked up because he's now using an online platform, okay, to say those things and to make those allegations. It's wrong for us to have that.
So how do you presume that this calls by SERAP, would go on? Because NGE and SERAP are asking for the laws to be repealed or removed. So how would you foresee this turning out? And if you were to advise, what advice would you give to NGE and SERAP?
No, there's no way you can remove the law. You can only look for a way to amend it, because see, society is dynamic. Okay. So are you saying that there should be no Cybercrime Act again? What will not happen? Even under the watch of the states and all that, people have you been bullied online before? Some people go commit suicide.
Yeah.
Some people just slip into clinical depression just because they are bullied. They use negative languages against them. It gets at them. People have different temperaments and all that. So you are always going to have people committing offense, okay? But that should not be misinterpreted. Some person should not be somewhere, should not be paid then to go pick up people randomly and start to, deal with them. You don't take them to court. Okay, the young guy that was picked up, who I'm not a fan of his, has been there since Friday. Today is Monday. Okay, has he been charged? Have they released any statement? No, nothing like that.
I guess by today, we should be able to know, because I don't know that any court was sitting over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, no court will see, definitely. But the law is that you are supposed to take him to. That same day he was picked up in the morning. So if you have a court within 40 kilometers radius, you are supposed to charge him. Okay, why keep him over the weekend? Just because you want to rely on the time to put him through more pressure. So by today, he should be charged to court or released unconditionally. That is the law. So they cannot tell us that they are arresting people to enforce the law, and then they'll start to break the law to enforce the law. It's wrong. We don't break the law to enforce the law. So the police, whoever, EFCC that arrested, whoever, must come within the confines of the law to have people charged to court accordingly.
So, but this scenario that you paint about people being picked up and arrested indiscriminately and not brought before a court of competent jurisdiction within the time frame is not a scenario that is new to us. We're only just hearing more.
But it's still wrong.
Yes, I know. I'm trying to drive at a point. Why I say it's not a scenario that is new to us is because we've had several scenarios happen like this in the course of the past few years. We're only hearing more about it now with the advent of social media and the fact that there are more people who are into online content creation, and social media has created a platform for everyone to have a voice. So if you say that law enforcement agents are educated, they haven't been educated all this while. Do you have any faith that really there's anything that can be done to ensure that there is a change? Because if pre-social media era this was a challenge, now that social media is a widely used, it is still a challenge. Is there really any hope for us to be able to find that balance where you know that if they're arresting, they are following due process to make their arrest?
There is hope. The law enforcement agents that fail to abide by what the law says, they should be sanctioned. By the time you begin to dismiss them from the force, you understand? They will begin to abide by the provisions of law. It's because there are no consequences, okay? So even today, as I speak to you today, unlike before, when we take police to court, we get judgment against police, we're able to go to court because we're able to, because they will not want to pay when we get judgment against them. So we'll go and garnish their account. because then you could trace police account and garnish whatever it is as your judgment.
Can you explain in layman's terms what it means?
Now, what I mean is before Buhari's regime, we have clients that police have maltreated. Many of the law enforcement will go to court. When we go to court, most of the times we get judgment against the police. Okay, and the court makes an order that the police pay, the judgment creditor.
Yes.
That's the person who got judgment. Police, being a judgment debtor, will not want to pay. In those days, we have the accounts of Nigerian police. We have the accounts. So what you do is you go back to court and file an action to garnish, to take the judgment sum from police account. Then the court will make an order against the bank, asking the bank to transfer whatever is in the police account to the judgment creditor, the one who got judgment against the police. Okay? That's before Buhari regime. Then
what changed?
Now, what changes is they came up with the TSA. You understand? Wherein, when you want to, you cannot access.
There's a central person.
Yeah, you can't even access any of the public services. You can't access their account. They have to go and generate remitter. That remitter, the number there, represents that particular payment, and you don't know the account is going to. So you don't have a central pool any longer. So today, when you commence an action against police, and you get judgment, you get everything, police will not pay. When you want to go to garnish the police account, there's no account to garnish. There was a case I did. The only account was the community bank account when we were supposed to garnish, and at the end of the day, we discovered there was 6 naira that was there.
Oh dear.
We were going to garnish over 10 million.
Wow.
So
Yes.
6 naira.
And it's a community bank. Okay. That's the only one that is visible right now. There's no other one that is visible for anybody to garnish any amount. So the judgment creditors will now be complaining. They have judgment with them. They cannot enforce their judgment. They cannot reap the fruit of their judgment. That is what it is.
So that should have been of impunity.
Yes, because that should have been a penalty working against the police. Okay, in which case, when that money is taken down, those who are involved in that action will be selected, and that money will be removed from their salary. So if you do that consistently, they will not, they will not want to take the risk of, abusing the law or making a mess of the
law. Consequences.
Yeah, today there's no consequence. There's no consequence. Even the ones that, the ones that kill people, shoot people, sometimes we don't hear about the cases again.
Yeah, it goes.
Yeah, so they have orderly trial, then the next thing, they dismiss them, they prosecute them, and they don't really know what happens thereafter, whether they are truly convicted or not.
We are pointing hands at law enforcement agents, but don't the courts also and the judiciary have a role to play in this? Because they will bring this case eventually before a court of competent jurisdiction. Is there a role that the judiciary has to play in all of this?
Yes, now the role the judiciary has to play is to look at the case, whether there's abuse, whether or not. And the judiciary, we've had a lot of judgment delivered against police and the rest of even the EFCC. In fact, the EFCC they lose over 80% of all the cases they file. Yeah, because of the way they go about prosecution and because of this
media trial.
Yeah, this media trial and then this lack of tact. Not too long ago, some months ago, someone resorted to self-help in Port Harcourt and shot one of them because they came out and ordered.
Yeah, I remember that story.
Yes.
Jumped into
Yeah, and then somebody had to. So I don't know the kind of training they have or they give them, but Nigeria is a civil society. Forget about the insurgency. We're not at war. It's not a jungle. It's still a country with a constitution with the proper fragmentation of nationhood. Okay, it's still a country. It's even in Nigeria here that we think Nigeria is bad. When you travel, everyone wants to be like a Nigerian. Everyone wants to identify. Even when you are broke, you think you are broke. The people out there, they are saying you look at the dirty December that happened. I have Black American friends who came, who said they are coming back.
Yeah.
They will always come back that this is home. Even the ones that, if you look at their faces, you know that these could be from other countries. They all don't agree. They say they are Nigerians. I said, well, look at your portrait, you look like you are from Kenya. They said, no, they're Nigerians.
I can imagine
that's where they came from.
We'll go on a quick break. When we come back, we have just 2 more questions to share with you. I want us, as a concerned citizen of Rivers State, I'm sure, Rivers and of course Delta State, I'm sure you're aware of the move by the former governor and of course the current governor. We'll talk about that. Let's take this break. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back from the break. We still have with us constitutional lawyer Evans Ufeli, who joins us here. Let's take a look at what's going on in Delta State. Looking at our time, former governor, let's use the lingua, porting to another political party and saying that he regrets having been having worked with former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. And then you also have the current, who has also said, you know what, I'm joining the party. Of course, he's now the APC leader in the state. I mean, you're a concerned citizen, and you've been following this very closely within that region. What's your take on this?
Yeah, my take is that for the past 6 days after the defection, they were going all around the media to convince people that the reason they defected was to bring development to the people of Delta State and to align Delta State with the center. In fact, at some point, one of the officials said the purpose is to plug Delta State into the, and these are lies. Okay, I'm the president of Concerned Citizens of Delta, and many people are not happy about what has happened because the switch in alliance or in allegiance is for their pockets. It's just for the purposes of their selfish interests. They do not represent us. They do not represent us, okay? I mean, the current governor, the people of Delta State, even some of the people defecting with them are not happy. The governor himself made an order. He gave an order. He gave an order that his followers, his commissioners, his whatever, should go and join and go and register with the APC, okay? So, Delta State is a foundational member of the PDP from 1999. Okay. Then you wake up one morning, you want to plug us into. We were not consulted. Okay, there was nothing like consultation.
But one of the guests joined and said they consulted
the Delta State Commission of Information. They said they're acting in the best interest of Delta.
I know Charles Anyago. Charles Anyago, few days to that, was vilifying the APC. Few days to that, talking, I know him very well, okay? So what changed? It was not up to 1 week. He was in that before they switched, okay? So for the young pocket, let me just tell you why they left. Okowa embezzled 1.3 trillion of the Commonwealth of Delta State. He used this to chase a white elephant project to become the vice President of Nigeria with Atiku in 2023. He used all that fund to pursue that nonsense, and with someone like Atiku that had no political capital. And when that crumbled, the current governor, at the time when Okowa did that, was the Speaker of the State House of Assembly. And because the legislature approved expenditures, because it was actually loan. Yeah. So he was the one who was approving all that. And so, Okowa and the current governor, they're actually in the same ship. The reason the current governor has not been picked, like Okowa, is because of immunity. Is that they are both the same thing. So both of them are working in criminal concert, okay, to defraud Deltans, to impoverish Deltans for their personal gain. Now, and so because they know that they switch over, they know that, like Aso Rock said, I mean, we all know that Akpabio was in this same position that Okowa was when he left office, and he had to move to APC, and his sins were forgiven. So that's exactly what Okowa has done, to move there and to go about gallivanting all over the place to say that is to develop data, is to plug data.
APC, this switch, long and short of it is that APC membership grants you some sort of immunity.
Yes.
So what's the gain for APC in taking them into their fold?
The game for APC is 2027. They want to win as many states as possible, okay, to return Tinubu. That's exactly what's going on. So as a president, the more states you have, the more, you need 24% of 25 states to become the president. So as many states as possible that they can grab. In the last election, they didn't win Delta. Now they're adding it to their feathers. And our politicians are going up and down, ask these people, these governors,
and most what is it are likely to join? Most state governments.
More states are likely to join. Okay, because many of the governors have skeletons in their cupboard. They have sins that need to be forgiven.
So how can EFCC work independently? Is it possible, is a pipeline dream, to say, look, we're going to pursue these petitions regardless of what orders or directives come from the presidency? Because the files are there. They invited these persons of interest for meetings and they know what is really going on. Are we going to have a true EFCC that works for the people and not any political party?
It's difficult for you to have an independent EFCC when the president is the one that appoints the head of the EFCC. It's difficult. If it's only in clans where Attorney General is voted by the people or the head of the EFCC is voted by the people and all that,
then they can be independent. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, regardless of how powerful he is still facing trial. It's being prosecuted for corruption.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. We don't have the political will to do that here. I mean, these people are subservient to the presidency. The law enforcement agency, they are subservient to the presidency. So the president said, don't prosecute these people. Even when you prosecute them, just like in Buhari's case, you will give them pardon.
Okay, so I have two questions.
So we will take off the sins. The president can still take off the sins.
Even so we had a $1 trillion issue here, and the EFCC
1.3 trillion
prosecuting people that spraying money.
Yes, that's it now, so that they are working.
I have two questions, but I think the first one would be, do you think that the people of Delta State can see through all this that you have highlighted? And do you think it will reflect different when they go to the polls?
Well, the people of Delta State, they know what is going on. They know that this is not for them, but they are scared of talking. I'm about the only voice in the entire state that's against this thing. No, that's talking. Many people are against it, but that could come out and talk. Many of them, especially the one man where I came from, he will go under the radar, he will enter the water, he won't hear anything because of what to eat. And I'm speaking to them. You understand? So we have been impoverished, and we cannot allow this to fester uncontrollably. We have to do something about it. These people are the black sheep of Delta. We must, in fact, we should ostracize them. If it had been in the olden days, we would take Agogo and take them before the shrine and call on the God of creation or whatsoever God we ask for to strike them, because they have finished Delta State completely. You look, ask them, what is the investment of the current governor or the past governor, the one before, on the citizens? Nothing.
All right. Nothing. My second question is about the PDP. What does this reflect about the strength, the structure, and the influence of the People's Democratic Party in Delta State and globally, nationally?
Yeah, from the center, they made a statement that they are going to go to court. Okay, because. The mandate is not theirs, it's the people's mandate. And it's actually a political party that contests elections, okay, and win or lose election, even though the Constitution did not make provision for the executive when they defect.
Only the legislature.
Only the legislature. And the legislature, there's even a condition. You have to also show and prove that there's dispute in the party and the party is unable to function effectively. Okay. So, but that notwithstanding, the PDP at the center still want to go to court to test it. And I think it's fine to do that so that we can test and entrench our laws, whether it is right to switch allegiances just like that and then abandon the people that gave you the mandate. And then you come back to tell them that you are going to plug them to Abuja. How much revenue has that added to the city of? If not for criminality, the current governor have no business defecting. He's doing well technically. He has no business, at least within his predecessor and all that. He's trying to stand out. But because of their past, because of their past. You know, they have to go and look for how to protect themselves to get their second term and then to get their sins forgiven.
The Commissioner of Information, Delta State, said that he used the analogy of a car. He said they thought what they had was a punctured tire, but then on closer examination, he found out that it was the brain box that was damaged. So he has connected to the central nervous system of Abuja. He used the example of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu when he was in opposition as governor of Lagos. There was only when APC aligned with the center, APC Lagos and APC Center, that we could see projects like the Lagos Calabar, and they also want to get the best from the federal purse. I did say, and I told him that, look, the president was alone in opposition. He didn't.
He was alone.
He was alone. He said now that he said, okay, that they don't want to suffer the things he suffered. They want to enjoy the benefits of having a government in the center. Does that argument hold water?
The argument does not hold any water. It's just compounding. The man is confused because I know him one-on-one, and when I see him also, I will usually tell him that he's confused because if Tinubu had left ACN or AD, and when there was a time when PDP took over Southwest, it was only one left, and he stood his ground. You know, very patient. Even when he had the opportunity to become the vice president in 2015, he didn't take it. He brought in Osinbajo. That was why when he was saying Emilokon, it sounded somehow to us that, is this man okay in democracy? But he knew what he was talking. Yeah, because he had gone through so much. And he knew what he was saying. It may not be right. And for the first time, I'm talking like I support him on that issue. He stood his ground. Okay? Today you have governor, deputy governor. I mean, you order everybody to move to a political party. You don't know where you
guys for the people.
What is the attraction of the APC? The same APC that have impoverished the entire country, that have brought us to ruin. So they don't have any justification other than it is that criminality hanging on their neck. That is the reason that he's saying all this and saying there's no other thing that are there.
A lot is also being said because the question now would be, now that they've moved to the APC, is it secured, as it were? The vote is already secured. And if you say that they're disgruntled Deltans, how can they prove that they're disgruntled when they go to the polls? Can you guarantee that their thumbprint would actually prove that they're disgruntled or they're not happy? Or would it be a case of they're just going to the polls for going's sake? However, the bag has been secured in one way or the other. So there's a lot. I mean, there's INEC there to talk about. There's also...
To add to what George said, the polls are in 2 years' time. Do we have that discipline to remember the injury that was caused to us in 2026?
Yes, that is for the people. That is for the people to determine. But I'm very, very scared of the people. I do not have absolute trust in the people because of their disposition towards situations. Some of them have been so ravaged by poverty, impoverished to the point where coming out on the day of election, they are coming out with the mindset that I have my allegiance. Who is going to buy it? Vote buying will take a chunk of, they will no longer know what they are doing any longer. It happened in my estate. We had a meeting in my estate where we said, we are going to ensure that nobody sells votes in the last election. I headed that, our secretary to this, we all agreed. On the day of election, we came out and we all, posture and all that. So, before you know it, all of a sudden, some persons came and I saw members of my estate collecting money and they going up to the queue.
That's at the estate level.
Yes, at the estate. They were
was this in Lagos or in Delta Way?
Was
this in Lagos or in Delta Way?
In Lagos. Ooh. So I started protesting. Then I called the chairman, the CDA chairman, that look at what is going on. We had an agreement on this and this. He said, which agreement did we have? He had sold his own vote 2 days before the election. And that people came out, collected money in my presence. I was disgruntled. I protested to the point where they bundled me out of the place. So that is the thing about the people. when you want to rely on them to make a change, you will not see them comply for that change. So this society has been screwed in a way that people will sacrifice their future for the moment.
For bread.
They will just That's a microcosm of entire society. So if they can behave like that,
so I'm scared that these people may not remember the injury again, and they may want to begin to go around. Because remember, these people are still going to come to them during the election. The leaders are still going to come to them and promise them whatever it is they want to give them, and buy their votes or influence them or do all that. They will forget about it.
All right. Anyway, I think we'll count down to see what will happen, and hopefully we'll like to have you back and see the future.
Well, before we wrap up, I just want him to share his thoughts on a conversation we had at the start of the show, which is the staging of the walkout in Rivers State. I don't know if you saw that there was a gathering and these women walked out. The reports we have are that it was the First Lady who was hosting the people. Unfortunately, she couldn't be there personally, but she had the wife of the sole administrator representing her, and they walked out. Wiki has described it as a show of shame on the people in Rivers State, the women in Rivers State, that it's a show of shame and an embarrassment to the people of Rivers State, and he's apologized to the First Lady for the disrespect, obviously alluding to the fact that a disrespect to the wife of the sole administrator, who is standing in the capacity of the First Lady, is also a disrespect to the First Lady. Do you agree?
She's not a First Lady, and the husband is an illegal entity in the state. He's a stranger. There is no law that gave him that portfolio. He's there because the president decided to apply extra-constitutional means to govern the state. So I don't think that. This is to tell you that these women, you think that they are illiterate. These masses, you think they don't know what they are doing, they don't know anything. They can stand for their rights too. They can take the stage and tell you what. They say they want for brothers, you can't bring him. That's actually the person that they donated their allegiance to. Not the person there now. The person there now is a stranger. Okay? So there's nothing wrong in that. They are working out. It's protest. Everywhere in the world, protest is recognized. Even in the Bible, protest is biblical. Yes, it's a big issue. You understand? So saying that they work with First Lady, which First Lady? Under what law? Is it the First Lady? Does even the law even recognize the office of the First Lady? Somebody just came out. I mean, if Tinubu's wife had been there, that's the same thing that they would have done. They would have even done more because the husband had removed the governor. You understand? So I don't think that's any kind of because you see, our leaders believe that everything they are doing, that the people accept. They assume that they are surprised. Even when the president's wife went to Delta State to say, "Now our mama believes and all that," the people refused. And she was surprised. I was wondering, why is she surprised? Okay, you think you have legitimacy?
Are you their mother?
I mean, you don't have legitimacy. The sovereignty belongs to the people, through which government derives its legitimacy. That's the Constitution, Section 14(2). So the people, they are the ones that will decide what legitimacy is. So you don't need to be surprised. Wike is saying it's an embarrassment, that is apologizing to whatever. In fact, there's a report I saw where he was accusing Fubara of sponsoring those.
Saying that you can't be saying you want.
Yeah, and I think that is wrong. Fubara not sponsor anybody.
Just before we leave you, there's one other issue we need to talk on, because you've been an advocate for prison decongestion. It's the state of video emerged on social media over the weekend of correctional facility in Jos. I mean, I'm sure if they do the food the animals eat in London Zoo must be suitable for human consumption. That's how much the standard is. And this is what the prisoners in Nigerian prisons. The Comptroller General of Prisons has come out to deny this. He's denied. He said they get about 1,200 feeding allowance.
No, there's been an increase from 1,100.
That there's been an increase from 1,215 and what have you. My question is this. There's a huge percentage of Nigerian prisoners that are awaiting trial inmates. There's serious prison congestion in all facilities, in all correctional facilities. How can they, from your point of view and from your interactions, decongest these prisons? At least if the population is reduced, they'll spend less on food, and then the ones that are there that should be awaiting that should be carrying out their sentence would eat food that is suitable for human consumption and dignity. What do they need to do?
Well, what they need to do to decongest the prison is, first, it starts from the court. Not every sentence should be custodian sentence. Okay, there are some of these sentences that should be for community service and all that. That decongest the prison. So you don't need to put them in custody. They go, then the governors of states, they are not signing death warrants. Nobody is signing death warrants.
Why? Do they think their spirit is going to come and hunt?
Yeah, but I don't know, but nobody is signing death warrant as we speak. And even when, yeah, it signed a few years ago when 4 persons were. Even when you sign as a governor, and then the person has been condemned and you sign, there's no hangman in Nigeria. No hangman. So there are not those who have been condemned to die by hanging.
Who's going to do the job?
How do you mean there's no hangman?
There's no hangman.
Vacancy.
There's vacancy. Okay, but people are not applying. People don't want to take the job.
People are going into tech.
So
what happened to firing squad?
So that's no, it's no longer that was under the military.
Oh, okay.
Capital punishment like murder, armed robbery, and all that is death by hanging.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't have legal injections.
No, we don't have that in our law.
Sentenced to die by hanging.
They are supposed to do that. So the issue is that if the governors are not signing death warrants,
there's no
the prison will not be decongested if
they're not charging people.
They are not charging people within the time, because every problem there will be. If all the sentences you are doing is custodial, you will have problem. Then the issue of the food. You see that food? That food is the only people who eat that food are those who do not have anybody.
Yeah.
You understand? And they are not too much. But government still budget for everybody.
Yeah.
So that money is embezzled. Because if there are 50 people in the prison, 200, 100, government budget for everybody, assuming but not conceding that all of them.
How do the others feel?
All of them. Yeah. Others, no, people don't. No, people, there are a lot of people.
Vendors.
Yeah, we have prisoners that built a chapel inside the prison. We have prisoners that put warders on salary. So not everybody is impoverished. People have people who bring food for them, send them money. They cook their own food and they eat their own food. You understand? It's just the minority that rely on that thing you are seeing. But it is the whole inmate that is budgeted for by government.
So the money is going somewhere.
Yes.
Minister of,
the Controller General of the prison and then the Minister of Interior.
2025 budget for feeding and catering for inmates in Nigeria is 30 billion naira.
38 billion across the country.
And I believe the entire prison population should be less than 60,000. I believe.
Yeah. So when you have that, I don't have the statistics, but when you have that, you see that the money is being embezzled. You know, I've been to a prison custody one time where, you know, I went to see my clients and I was discussing and all that. They said there was an NGO that came and they brought food, and that the food didn't get to some prisoners. That some of the food that the prisoner ought to have been taken by the warders. So I was now asking myself, who among the inmates and the warders actually need reform? Because if you steal food that belongs to an inmate, I think
the lowest of
yes, and there is a prison, my friend who was convicted at some point, when he came out, he told me about the prison custody and the way that when they want to take excreta out of the sockaway, the prisoner will get into the sockaway with a bucket to bail out feces.
That's what Alabi was sharing.
Yes. To bail out.
So, you know, these statistics from Nigerian Correctional Service website says as of 28th of April 2025, this is the most current data, Nigeria had 80,672 prisoners, including pretrial detainees. Of this number, 66.7% are pretrial detainees.
That's high.
Yes, very high. Pretrial. So you can't. How do you decongest the prison if you have that kind of number? So the ones that are even condemned are just a minority among them, and there's still no facility.
It's not the budget; it's accountability, and also the courts and the police.
Yes, reforms as well.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, let's look at a similar case right now. I mean, Nigeria's justice system has once again come under the spotlight after a 25-year-old man who chooses to go by the name Martins, is battling partial paralysis after spending 8 months in a correctional facility without trial, just like what we're saying. He was accused of stealing a phone that was never found on him and is now suffering a deteriorating health condition with no help in sight. News Central correspondent Sumaya Abubakar brings us this troubling report, and she will join us as a follow-up. Take a look.
He was young, hopeful, and earning a modest income as a security guard, but after an accusation of stealing a phone, his fortunes changed forever, with his life taking a different turn.
He said that he took someone's phone, that the phone fell down on the ground. And the woman said that she saw him when he was picking the phone.
It's very important to state that this phone was never found on Martins. The phone was never found. They never saw the phone, but he was arrested. He spent a week, according to him, in the police station before he was taken to the Suleja correctional facility.
Held in prison for 8 months awaiting trial, Martins developed partial paralysis behind bars as medical checks confirmed. He says he was given only basic care at the Correctional Center's clinic, which definitely was not enough.
When I get to the thing, I was very healthy. Nothing happened to me. So with that, this is what start, and I start. No family was to who the clinic is there. Single door, no day there. You will go complete your high price I want to give you.
Me seeing my brother the day they brought him to the court, he was very, very sick. Even I cried off my head that very day.
In response to his deteriorating condition, the center pushed for Martin's case to be heard, leading to the granting of bail. Pro-human rights organization, the Legend Golden Care, criticized the police for poorly investigating Martin's case, blaming them for his prolonged detention.
I've interacted with a lot of brilliant police officers, but some of our police officers, their work is way below par. And why am I saying that? Why would you arrest a young man, lock him up, he's been incarcerated for 8 months without any investigation? You lock him up and you begin to do investigation.
The executive director of the NGO also accused the correctional facility of failing to provide adequate medical care, worsening his health condition during his time in custody.
The problem is not even just that he developed a stroke. He was never taken to hospital, not once.
In response, the controller of the Correctional Service FCT Command denied Martin's claim that he was made to sleep in a toilet, saying that the center did the best it could with its limited resources.
That's not true. He was given maximum attention as an inmate. Along the line, we discovered he has a medical challenge, which within the limitation of the medical facilities we have, we attended to him. Based on the letter we wrote to the judiciary and the judge himself seeing him, let him go.
He offered an apology to Martins for any perceived mistreatment, insisting that the facility did what it could with limited resources. This, however, according to the NGO, is inadequate as it calls for greater accountability.
I want to appeal to the inmates. If there was anything he suffered, it's not making we're very sorry. We did our best. Our best might not be enough, but we did.
I mean, on all levels, it's just wrong that this guy has been dehumanized in such a way. I believe that he deserves compensation.
From a simple accusation with no concrete evidence, Martins has lost more than time. He has lost his health, his job, and part of his dignity. With his trial still pending, his fight for justice is far from over. In Abuja, for News Central, Sumaya Abubakar.
Very sad situation. Well, let's wrap up this. Just one last word from you, Philly, looking at that report.
Yeah, so this is just one among many cases. I mean, this one came to limelight because someone is helping the young boy, okay? There are many cases where nobody is helping anybody. There are many cases where you don't even we have inmates that have no file, no case file, nothing. They are just there languishing. There are so many cases like that in our custody.
Very sad. Very sad indeed. Anyway, that's all we're going to bring for you for this hour. Breakfast Central continues. We'll quickly take a look at what we have. There's still to come. And don't forget the front pages are also up next. So do us a favor. Stay with us. We'll be right back after the break.
In which way Nigeria? Later today we have Jasiri News Now and Nigeria Tonight. Stay with us. Breakfast Central continues shortly.
Welcome to Breakfast Headlines. We bring you the news this morning, and we begin with INEC's denial of reports claiming it has set May 27, 2025 for the resumption of continuous voter registration and related services. In a statement posted Sunday on X, INEC's Chief Press Secretary Rotimi Oyekomi described the circulating message as false and anonymous, urging the public to disregard it. The Commission clarified that it has not yet announced any date for the resumption of voter registration, transfers, or replacement of lost permanent voter cards. He, however, emphasized that any official updates will be shared through INEC's verified social media handles and official communication channels. The Commission urged Nigerians to remain alert and avoid spreading unverified misinformation. Still on political matters, Oseloka Obaze, a key ally of Peter Obi, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 general elections, has resigned his membership of the party. Obaze disclosed this in a letter addressed to the Labour Party chairman in Ochuche Ward 406 Ogbaru local government area in Awka on Sunday. Obaze, a former United Nations diplomat, was the secretary to Anambra government under Obi and had worked closely with him as an advisor and chieftain of the party until his resignation from Labour Party. He said his decision was to express his disapproval and protest the conduct of the April 5th governorship primary election of the party in Anambra State. Obaze also cited a leadership crisis in the Labour Party at the national level and the refusal of leaders of the party to harmonize or reconcile the Julius Abure and Senator Nenadi Usman factions. He, however, did not disclose his next political moves. The Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiative, in collaboration with the National Union of Road Transport Workers in Abuja, have slashed the transport fares of all PCNGI registered public transport vehicles by 40% for residents within the federal capital. The PCNGI, during the flag-off ceremony of the initiative at the Area 1 Motor Park in Abuja, says that the scheme is expected to ease the transportation costs for residents of the capital in line with President Bola Tinubu's directive. It says that converted vehicles have signed up for the scheme and all their routes from the Area 1 Motor Park to other locations in the FCT will henceforth experience a reduction in their fares.
The intention is to, as much as possible, reduce the price of transportation for the general public. We have worked hand in hand with the National Union of Road Transport Workers. We have converted a lot of their vehicles, and based on the agreement that we have with them, of course, is for them to reduce the prices for the general public so that the effect of the fuel subsidy that was taken off, the burden will be reduced on Nigerians.
Vehicles that have been converted, we have a price tag written on the vehicles, so that you as a passenger, if you are going to Gwagwalada Nyanya, you will notice that this vehicle is being converted and this is the price tag. You don't need to ask anybody, you don't need to suffer yourself. And any driver, we are in charge of the drivers because they are our driving members and we are in charge. We make sure that all the members, all the passengers enjoy this benefit. As long as we are giving that benefit, we also want the members to enjoy it in order to make sure that Mr. President succeeds in this program that he has.
And now to security matters. Anambra State Police Command has foiled a kidnap attempt in Neni and Naucha local government area of the state. The command's public relations officer, SP Tochukwu Ikenga, who disclosed this in a statement, said the operatives also rescued 3 victims, including a husband and wife. He said the command's operatives attached to the Neni Division responded swiftly to a distress call along Okacha Junction at about 8:45 p.m. on Saturday and successfully thwarted the kidnap attempt. Ikenga added that a joint security force comprising the military, Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps 1 and local vigilantes were supporting the police in an ongoing operation to apprehend the suspects, reportedly armed with sophisticated weapons. Away from that, the officers and men of the Nigerian police force have vacated the official residence of the Galadiman Kano, located at Galadanchi Gwale local government area of Kano State. The security personnel initially laid siege to the residence following a parallel coronation of two Galadimas by rival emirs Aminu Ado Bayero and Mohammed Sanusi II. News Central correspondent in Kano reports that the police vacated the residence, allowing the Emir Sanusi-backed Galadima Alhaji Manir Sanusi Bayero to resume duty at the official residence of the Galadima after his turbaning ceremony by His Highness Khalifa Muhammadu Sanusi Sarkin Kano on Friday. He is currently receiving homage from loved ones and well-wishers. Moving away from the country, Sudan's Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, on Sunday carried out drone strikes on key military and civilian targets in Port Sudan, according to the country's army. Army spokesperson Nabil Abdullah confirmed that RSF suicide drones targeted the Osman Digna Air Base, a goods warehouse and civilian infrastructure in the city. The RSF, led by the Mohammed Hamdan Daglo, had intensified its use of drones in recent weeks after losing significant ground, including much of the capital, Khartoum, in March. Sunday strikes, which also hit the airport in nearby Kassala, signal a dangerous expansion in the scope of RSF attacks, reaching far beyond the traditional front lines of the conflict. The brutal war between the RSF and Sudan's regular army, commanded by de facto leader Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has already claimed tens of thousands of lives and displaced more than 13 million people. It is the first time the eastern coastal city, home to the army-backed government, has come under direct attack since the war began in April 2023. And that's all we have this morning for you on Breakfast Headlines. We'll now connect back with Breakfast Central. I am Olive Emodi.
Welcome back. It's time for us to take a look at the front pages of the newspapers. But before we do that, we do have our newspaper guest who's here to join us in analyzing the front pages. But let's tell you that reports emerging from Katsina highlight serious concerns regarding the Hisbah as allegations of oppression and physical assault surface within the community. Eyewitnesses recount horrid stories, including the disturbing assault of a woman, raising critical questions about the role of morality enforcement and also the entire body. But we do have our correspondent who will join us pretty soon. But let's just give you a quick review as you take a look at what we are talking about. Try to get all that information up for you so you can get it. But take a look at this.
In northwest Nigeria, is widely known for its deep-rooted heritage and strong adherence to Islamic principles. However, beneath these religious commitments lies a troubling reality. The body, established by the state government to enforce strict adherence to Islamic laws, is now perceived by many as oppressing individuals under the guise of enforcing religion. Many residents have reported different experiences. There have been numerous stories of individuals being physically assaulted by Hisbah members for minor infractions, such as not wearing appropriate clothing, playing music, or going out late at night.
He insulted my mother. I said, don't insult my mother again. You don't know who she is. You don't know her. If I insult your mother again, what would you do? I said, don't insult my mother again. He still repeated the same thing. I retaliated. I insulted him back. He said, I'll come and slap you. I said, come and slap me, since I did something wrong. Just from behind, I received a slap, a very sound slap from behind. I reacted. I was like, to even turn and see who slapped me. The next thing, beating from everywhere, that I attempted to slap
VOC. Every man of the Hizbah that was there, he was beating her. I started shouting, Yaya Tachi, Kakuriyeta Karuachi. That was the only thing they were saying. She was a prostitute. They were saying she was a prostitute. I was saying she's not a prostitute, she's my sister. They continue beating her. For me, I was angry, yes, I was upset, but I was more ashamed than angry. I couldn't defend my sister. Why she was humiliated and called names that she would never be associated with.
For the Hizbah commander, the body is a moral force responsible for upholding Islamic laws and promoting proper behavior in the community.
Amma dukkanin abin da ke ga Hizbah ta ce kar a yi, imma dai Allah madaukakin sarki ne hana wannan abin a cikin Alkur'ani mai girma, wanda duk musulmi ya kamata ya san wannan. Kuma ya ma sani. Daga ciki akwai tasar da kike magana, daga ciki akwai kide-kide wanda Allah ta'ala ya ce wa sha'ara'u yattabi'uhum al-ghawun. Nasoshi ga sunan daban-daban a cikin Alkur'ani. Manzon Allah a nusus na hadisai ya hana shigar banza, yawon banza da sauran abubuwan da addinin musulunci ya hana wanda kowa ya sani.
But in what appears to be a controversial stance, the Hizbah commander claims that it is permissible in Islam to beat a woman as a means of enforcing morality.
Al'amarin tarbiyya dole sai an yi bugu. Wannan shine ka'idar tarbiyya.
These atrocious acts allegedly perpetrated by the Hizbah are widely known, yet many victims remain silent. I spoke with several other individuals who recounted being beaten mercilessly, but refused to speak on camera due to fear and chose to suffer in silence. Their stories paint a chilling picture of the terror that underpins the Hizbah enforcement. In a city that takes pride in its Islamic identity, many residents now find themselves caught between the pursuit of faith and the quest for freedom.
The way they work is barbaric. From the experiences of my daughters, it is barbaric because there is no law on earth that says you can brutalize a fellow human being, let alone a woman. Are there not female Hizbah officers that could have handled her case? She was dragged like a dog by 4 men. Her cap is lost. There was no veil on her, and they claim she was there with an indecent dressing. But what is so decent about how they treated her? So as far as I'm concerned, Hizbah is barbaric. Hizbah is inhuman.
Some believe that the Hizbah is not just about enforcing moral values, but also a way for the government to silence those who disagree with its policies.
Da sa hannun gwamnati suka mu wai suka koro mu suka ce mu taho gida za a bada sihiri. Karshe kawai sai dai muka ji labarin an kai su gidan yari. Sun kai shekara nawa ne? Duka cikin su yaro ɗaya ne wanda ya shekara 22. Duk sauran daga mai 18 sai mai 17. Wanda suke zuwa makaranta? Dukkan su makaranta suke yi. Dukkan su makaranta suke yi. Tunda an kware mu an kware yaran mu. Saboda an zalunce mu an zalunci bayan Allah. Saboda abin da aka yi mamu domin Allah mu ba a gyara mamu ba. Kuma an yi mamu zalunci.
Resulting from this is a growing distrust between the Hizbah and the residents, which leaves them feeling trapped in a cycle of fear and oppression.
sai wani rike da sai dai cire barin ya tafiya ba inda ita ya za iya samun matsala wani su kamar ka kawai sai na hakura na tsaya dodi ne diga dare ban zabi kowa ba tan kama kowa ni dai ya tsaya domin na kare jikana abin sai ya fi karfi na fara kokarin cewa yunkurin in tattara kana in kwashi na fara zuba wasu akwai.
Because I want it for one reason, let there be justice for her, and then it should serve as a deterrent because I want the perpetrators to be prosecuted and brought to book.
The questions are the Hizbah's practices truly reflective of the values of the community, or are they being manipulated by the government to serve a political agenda? As the Hizbah continues to impose strict measures in the name of moral guidance, the lines between religious enforcement and government control remains blurry. In Katsina, for News Central, Rukaiya Jibiya.
And talking of Rukaya, she joins us now. Good morning to you, Rukaya. Thanks for taking time to be here. I mean, you took time in detail to bring that report, speaking to different persons, especially that family that were affected. Can you share with us where this is leading to, especially the time you took in covering this report? What were the other things that you did see behind the scenes?
About the Hizbah story, all I can say is the this is about 10% of what is happening in Katsina right now. Because I met with several individuals, like I said in the report, whom are very scared. They are so scared that they can't even talk to me freely. I had to take my time. I've been on this story, I think, for 3 weeks now. I had to take my time and build trust between I and them. But they still don't feel okay to share their experience on TV. So what is happening in Katsina, like the victim's mother says, is barbaric. Because I'm just surprised that in this 21st century, something like this is also a Muslim.
Please go ahead.
And he said it is very okay in Islam, it is permissible to beat a woman. And I see no ayah in the Quran that said you can beat a woman. That's merciless. Because I'm just thinking of how somebody's conscience will allow him to behave like this. I think there's a lady, because her photo is so, she was naked in the photo, so it can't be shared, I think. But this issue, all I can say, and this report just left me traumatized, because
okay, I mean, watching that report as well, I feel traumatized and I feel sad to see that. So let's talk about, first of all, how this makes you feel as a woman who is there. Do you feel safe, with the Hisbah having such unlimited powers, it will seem? And what are the men in, Katsina State saying about it, the majority of the men? Do you think there's a wide support for the Hisbah being empowered to beat and punish women, to quote-unquote instill moral values?
Okay, the thing is that many people are against what Hisbah are doing in Katsina. But from what I understand is the Hisbah has, they have the governor's backing, so they can do whatsoever they want. Because I think the governor in an interview, not with me actually, but in an interview, he said, since the Hisbah are doing a very good work, it is okay for them to continue what they are doing, because they are fighting for the religion. But I, as a Muslim, know that this is not about religion. It's about something else. This is not about religion. So many people are against what the Hisbah are doing, but the problem is, who will then stand for these ladies? The victim's mom, this particular victim, is a very strong woman, I must say, but she can't do it alone, because literally it's like she's fighting with the government. So many people are against it, but their voices are not heard. Or maybe can't be heard. Let me say can't be heard.
Now, my next question to you is this. You did speak to the Hisbah commander, and his response was quite frankly, wasn't encouraging. And to see the state of that victim, it's really heart-wrenching. She has cast on her leg. She has suffered from grievous bodily harm from cowardly men. Even the Nigerian police does not have a right to do that sort of thing to a person. Do you know if any victims of this Hisbah assault are talking to lawyers to seek some sort of compensation or to charge the men responsible for our injuries to court? Is there any conversation with regards to that?
I think the only person that is a lawyer in the course of my interview, the only person I know is that particular victim, Asma'u. Most of them, my people in Katsina are very conservative people. So for them to open up is another thing. So I don't think they are willing to speak to a lawyer, because they just think maybe it's okay, because nobody is willing to fight with the government. And it's obvious that maybe fighting with Hisbah is like you are fighting with the government.
But I mean, finally, I know because we're running out of time, but we'd love to have more insight into the discussion. On what laws does the Hisbah, promote these acts? Is it from the religious laws, or is it from the laws of the land, or does the state have a special law created for them to actually act? I think this is one of the major questions everyone would love to know. On which of the laws are they functioning on?
Okay, the Hisba commander said they are working on the religious law, one, and then the state law, because they said the state gave them the right to operate, but they are using the Islamic law. And Katsina being an Islamic state, I think it's both Islamic and then the state law.
Okay, I mean, just to quickly wrap up on my own end, you had mentioned earlier that there's more to it. It's not just about enforcing religious or moral values. What is this more that you think there is to Hisba?
Okay, some of the victims said that the Hisba are a tool used by the government, maybe to silence those that oppose them. I can't confirm that for sure, but there are elements. There are elements that maybe the Hisba are operating based on the government's decision. Why? Because they said it is not allowed to play music in Katsina. But just last week, it's the governor's daughter's wedding. And music was everywhere. But they said music is not allowed in Islam. So I don't know whether they are imposing their laws on the poor, and they, the rich, they are just enjoying themselves.
Right.
So I can say.
Right. I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned that. It's selective application of justice, or what their justice is in this case. Thank you so much for bringing us this report. We'll continue to amplify it on the show here, and we do hope that you stay safe, and that the rest of you in the state stay safe as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really sad update. When we'll come back, we'll be exploring the role of Hisba. What is the legal backing, especially in a secular state like Nigeria? How do we validate Hisba and their way of applying what they refer to as moral codes in the northern part of Nigeria? All these and more when we come back from this break.
Welcome back. Mr. Dr. John joins us live, public affairs analyst for the newspapers. Let's start off quickly looking at the Nigerian Tribune. That's the very first paper we'd look at. The big head of their poverty rate among Nigeria's rural dwellers hit 75%, according to World Bank. And then we still hear that the country is doing very, very well. And there's no problem. I'll take one more story before we go to that particular one. Police at Motekun crash in Ondo over arrest of suspects, 6 injured. Mr. John, let's start off with the poverty rate first. Just a few weeks we're hearing that, I mean, the economy is doing very, very well. And here we are, World Bank. The same World Bank comes back to say 75% are going through tough times.
Yes. So exactly 10 years ago, the United Nations had actually come out to say that one of the ways to tackle poverty is to allocate more resources to people living in abject poverty. And that's so instructive because it's opposed to the Nigerian kind of practice, our own system of allocation, because a lot of people don't get to know that one of the most important things that government has to do is not just making the money, it is allocating the money. So the logic of the United Nations is opposed to our own practice of allocating more funds to people living in affluence and in prosperity. And that's why we got to a point, not under this government in Nigeria, that we were using 25% of our budget to service the need of the National Assembly. So when you look at all of these things, you discover that we've not been strategic enough in curbing the ravaging issue of poverty in Nigeria. What do I mean by being strategic? Our poverty situation has left the physical realm to psychological realm. to the point that even when government is trying to solve the problem of poverty, there's a disconnect between what the government is doing and what the people think their government should be doing. The people do not believe in the effort of the government, and as a result of that, because the psychology of poverty says that you cannot take anyone out of poverty except such a person wants to willingly walk out of poverty. So the Nigerian people, when you hear that, oh, we are allocating even conditional cash transfer to the people, we are giving some people what they call empowerment, very annoying word, you still discover that they are not having the capacity to be empowered out of poverty. So it's a complication that a lot of strategic thinking needs to go into for us to actually come out of this situation. And it's so sad because we used to have a number of our people living in rural area. There are conflicting figures as to the percentage of Nigerians living in rural area, but I can confirm to you that we are now having about 48% to 52% of the Nigerian population living in rural areas. And once poverty strikes at the rural community, it has a way of extending to the urban areas. Farming, for example, one of the complications that we've had about the issue of poverty is that people can no longer go to their farm. Let me cite a very private example. If you've been to Akure, the airport is close by to the city. And a friend of mine had started a farm very close to the airport. Do you know that herders didn't allow him to go to the farm? They were picking everybody, kidnapping across the line at that point. So he had to say, I don't have anything to do in the farm. That's close to the, yes, that's close to the airport. That was the situation. And I'm not saying that's the present situation, but if you look at this complication of poverty, it started from 2019 during the COVID-19, and unfortunately, we've not been able to strategically prevent it from spreading. So what we have now, the economic policy of the government has further complicated the situation we had in 2019. I listened to Governor Alex Otti. As much as he was trying to not to criticize the government at the federal level, he said something that I had continuously hammered on this program, that there's no government who understands economy, who understands the feeling of his people. You know, I came here the other time and I defined democracy as a government that considers figure and feeling. If you continue to consider figure without measuring the pulse of the feeling of your people, you are a strategic failure. Now, he said something by the past, and a lot of people didn't pay attention to that though he wasn't expecting that you liberalize your foreign exchange market and take away subsidy at the same time. Nobody will do that and expect that there will not be complication of poverty. So what we are doing now is to try to patch up the error committed, that nobody is having the courage to come out to say, oh, on this one, we made mistake.
Wow. Okay. I'm hoping that we can take as many stories as we can this morning. So let's go to the Punch quickly and see the big story talking about Rivers emergency rule. National Assembly counters PDP governor suit, demands 1 billion naira. National Assembly also asks Supreme Court to dismiss opposition governor's lawsuit as Apex Court sets for hearing.
Okay, so it's been back and forth. The PDP governors are saying their major fear is the fact that with what happened in River, and I have that personal fear too, that the presidency is not empowered to the point where he can just decide to remove any governor. And that's very, very important, because virtually everyone has agreed to the fact that what happened in River, of course there are reports, the president has an helicopter view of what the security situation is. But with the way the AGF actually came out to address the matter, there were concerns here and there that if we leave our democracy in the hand of somebody who can actually wake up and take out governors like that, that it will mean that in a matter of months, Nigeria will actually get to a one-party state, owing to the fact that, number one, in Nigeria's situation, the powerful ones become more powerful. And secondly, you will have seen that opposition is almost dying in the country. So these are some of the fears. And the National Assembly is trying to come out in defense of their practice, that they haven't done anything wrong, that in fact, that the state governors also have the power to take them to court, because according to them, before that should have happened, could have happened, that the state assembly should have made a resolution compelling the governor or advising the governors to go to court. Whichever way, a number of people have condemned what happened in Rivers. And it's not to say that somebody is supporting Fubara or Wike, because from the beginning, I'm one of the people that have told you that one of the major problems we have with our democracy is that we have a faulty process from even internal democracy of party. If you cannot allow those who have the capacity to win primary election to win, and you bring your people from the back, you will continue to learn this kind of lessons that happen between godsons and political godfathers.
It's bound to happen.
Yes.
That's what it's looking like, though. That's what it's looking like. Still on the punch, Bring, I don't know if you want to take anything there, but I see this Nelfon story coming back up again. Nelfon under fire, overdose to ex-students. Last week we did talk about it. It was a Friday. Communication
issue. They said there was a case of corruption, the ICPC, and they said, okay, there's none to see here, no corruption. And people said, look, there's something really happening. They said it was in the water. And now we have seen ex-students accessing Nelfon loans. Who's to blame here?
Okay, so there was a sad story that I was privy to yesterday about a particular event in Nigeria, and somebody was telling me that she has to pay money to be part of the event. You see, greed has become our god and corruption our culture. And I think that's the major, and everybody has identified corruption as a major clog in the wheel of our democratic progress. And if anything is not done, and when you talk about corruption, it's easy for any government to come and say, oh, I am fighting corruption. But corruption is more of perception than incident. So you can say, oh, I'm fighting corruption. If you do not come across, especially at the topmost top, if your president does not come across as somebody who is genuinely fighting corruption, if your governors do not come across as people that are genuinely fighting corruption, then you discover that every unit of government, every agent of government will always find a way to want to cut corner. And I manage a fund, and that's why when you see the corruption in Nigeria, it's a subject of both followership and leadership. I manage a fund at a point in time to give to a particular set of people. I would not be able to mention their name. Do you know that I paid a certain amount of money out, and because people could not bribe their way through, they ganged up and they started making up stories. And I said to them, when I was addressing them at a point, I said, all of you would not have complained, because one did a voice note and sent to me and said, are you Jesus Christ? I told them that many of you would not have complained if I had allowed the system to take bribe and settle you privately. So in Nigeria, there are always willing givers, because our system has been compromised. And you know that the only way to go through the process is actually to bribe. And once you build an economy like that, where bribe is the only thing you can give to get what belongs to you, then you will see that it will have a spiral effect on the entire economy. So it's not just about government as we have it today. And thank God our leaders know that corruption is one of the major issues. In 2006, one of the reasons why former President Olusegun Obasanjo opposed his then deputy from becoming a president was concerned about corruption. In 2014, one of the reasons why Nigerians voted Buhari massively was not because of his economic skill to turn things around, was because of the perception that everybody thought that our major issue was corruption. And once we vote in a Buhari, he will be able to solve the problem of corruption. Whether he did that is a separate or different thing entirely. So corruption now has trickled down to every unit. And one thing that democracy has been able to do, you know, during military rule in Nigeria, there was massive corruption, but they call it controlled corruption. Democracy has been able to democratize corruption in a way that at the federal level, stealing is going on. At the state level, people are stealing blind. At the local government level, everyone seems to be stealing. And your state governors now, in case you are not aware, have more money than they've ever had. And we must continue to ask them the question, all of these monies that you are having, are you feeding corruption with it, or you are trying to create a situation that will make the Nigerian people lead a better life?
Okay, too many stories to look through. Unfortunately, it seems that we have run out of time, but we are just going to show you the front pages of all the papers in the next 1 minute before we head out of the studio. We've looked at the Punch and the Nigerian Tribune, the front page of the Daily Independent. 1 year after Dana Air suspension, passengers refund trapped, staff agitate over unpaid salaries. And we can see Ondo farmers shut expressway over plan to grade cocoa plantations. Those who send me to prison must account for it, according to Dele Farotimi. I saw that interview. So many stories there, but in 30 seconds, do you think that there's going to really be any accounting, those who sent Farotimi to prison, in terms of law enforcement agents, judiciary, the private citizens involved? Do you think there'll be any accounting?
I think there are private conversations that have already taken place, and they are still taking place. And the essence of those private conversations is to arrive at a point where everybody, at least we feel that, oh, whatever has happened has happened. With the intervention of important leaders in the Southwest and at the national level, I'm not seeing something that's like a war breaking out of it, but I see peace. It may not be the way all the parties want it, but at the end of the day, I'm just saying that there's going to be a roundtable kind of conversation that will put everything to rest.
Dr. Mojan, thank you for joining us this morning and for always sharing your thoughts. We love to hear them. And thank you to our audience for joining us virtually. Our guests, as many who have been a part of the show, we'll be back again tomorrow. It's time for us to head out of the show, but to let you know that there are other shows coming up on News Central. So please don't tune out. We have Jasiri coming up at 10 a.m. And of course, we have several other shows happening much later. But we'll be heading out now. I am Olive MOD, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for being a part of Breakfast Central today. See you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.
See you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching.